I'm going to be honest, this is probably my least favorite movie we've watched so far.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to... Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
No, you do the intro this time.
Did I do the intro in my head again? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the 1939 classic by Walt Disney that follows the Grimm's Brother tale of
Brothers Grimm.
Beautiful...
Brothers Grimm.
Whatever. It is the first animated feature-length film by Disney, and it follows the Grimm's Brother tale of the princess who is so beautiful that the queen banishes her from the kingdom and forces her to live her days with 7 tiny men in the forest. She is murdered by the queen and then brought back to life by true love's kiss, and she rides off into the sunset with her happy ever after Prince Charming. Daniel, thoughts on the movie?
So you're saying Snow White is responsible for the single greatest entertainment monopoly that has ever formed?
100%, yeah, absolutely.
That's fascinating.
I really, it is kind of wild to think about. There's a lot, I think, that's missing from this movie as far, especially like in comparison to what we've watched so far. Mm-hmm. But definitely in terms of the sheer scope of its influence, like...
And it's also, I find, in terms of movies that gets, like, referenced, I think this might be one of the most referenced films ever.
Probably.
I mean, in terms of just small little tropes, to shout-outs, to artwork, to just having it in their own movie and stuff, Snow White is something you will see constantly.
It definitely set the standard for animation, hands down. Yeah.
I feel like animators often referenced it too in like small little like notations within their own work, just to be like, that's clearly a Snow White reference, because yeah, this was, I think, what has given in a lot of ways animation the legs that it then ran on, like to create some of the greatest films of all time.
Like there's no doubt that it's a significant movie. Like it's kind of a cultural like focus point, but it's a really simple story. There's like 6 minutes of like when they're doing the dishes, that's like 6 minutes of plot of like an hour and a half long movie. Like it's mostly singing and mostly I feel like Disney just showing off like, you told us, they said I couldn't do it and I did it. They called me crazy.
It had a bit of that like self-showmanship that you have only in that time, like similar vibes that you see with like, actually I would not at the same time, but still within a similar vein, because it was referencing that time, Singing in the Rain, where it has this like, look how grand we can be. And that's what Snow White exactly fell into. And by God, does it also show the fact that it's a very new medium and a very unmatured medium, because again, if you're trying to pace out your film, a 6-minute song break in the middle of it can make you kind of lose the momentum. I liked Snow White, and I get why it's so important. I stand by my compliments before, but at several points in this movie, I was just like, can we be done yet? Like, this is so...
it was kind of a struggle to watch in some ways because it's so dated. Like, again, it's a beautiful film. It is definitely like an artistic sort of masterpiece to watch, especially when you have it in the context of when it was made and the fact that this is the first feature-length film. And, double, like, tack onto that the fact that it was in color, which was also a super new... what would you call it? Innovation.
Yeah.
It really does sort of set the standard for a lot of things. And they invented a piece of technology for this film that basically, are you familiar with it? Do you know what I'm going to talk about?
Oh, I will pretend not to be so we can explain it to our audience. I don't know. Tell me about these.
There's, Walt Disney pioneered the invention of this camera called the Multiplane Camera, which is one of my favorite videos to watch. It really is. It's
on Disney Plus, and it's fascinating.
It really is fascinating, but basically I will do my best to explain it to our audience. If you imagine the camera is looking down on several sheets of glass, 3 sheets of glass, and on the first plane of glass, you have the foreground. And on the middle plane of glass, you have our main characters and action shots that are going on. And then the bottommost sheet of glass, you have the background. And so as the people are shooting, they have knobs that can adjust the height and movement of those planes of glass so that it really gives the impression that our characters are moving back and forth through their environment. And they pretty much got that right on the first go. I mean, They invented that and then patented it, and that technology has been used basically up into until the computer era.
Well, it still is used in some people who just love that style and want to create shorts in that style or what have you. I mean, it's a genuine art form that, you know, is enjoyable to watch in the sense that, like, you can't really recreate that style in any other way, unless, of course, you know, computers can make it. You'd have to literally make it look that way.
Right.
And I think the way it also provided a lot of the motions, it felt much more human than I was anticipating going in for it. Like, there is some actual real facial expressions and emoting that hit in a very human way, especially for its time and the technological limitations. And I also know those artists who are doing cell after 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 cell.
He was definitely a perfectionist, and I think that knowing that there was all this pressure on Snow White that it had to be successful, the production of it started in 1934, and then it wasn't like released until 38 or 39.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a couple of numbers. There were like 2 million cells drawn and painted for this movie. And,
good God.
I mean, unreal. Like a stupid amount of like individual hand-painted and hand-drawn cells were made for this movie. But they also did, you know, I think Walt Disney took a lot of steps to ensure that this film would, endure. Because, you know, if you look at cartoons like shorts that had happened before this, one, you have a lot of stuff by the Disney company themselves that is mostly animals, right? And it is super cartoony. Or you have something like Betty Boop, which is like you see her walking around and she's got like spaghetti limbs and stuff. And so all of the animators that Disney...
Okay, Mr. Buffman, some of us are just built noodly, and we don't appreciate being called spaghetti people, okay? So we just had a totally normal, not random break from the discussion so I could get a milkshake. But now we're going to transition to a segment that I call The Many Crimes of Snow White, or the many felonies of a girl who's clearly unaware of the law.
There's nothing in this. I just don't want to feel left out of the drinking that's happening in this. Oh, God.
Here are felonies. Let's go.
Hit me with them.
All right, you tell me which scenes these felonies had to take place in. Are you okay?
Okay.
Breaking and entering.
Entering into the dwarves' domicile.
Starting an unlicensed business.
For, as like a house cleaner?
Yeah,
like a cleaning company?
She cleaned the shit out of their house because apparently Disney was like, we want our first female woman to spend most of the movie cleaning.
That's, okay, hold up. Yes. But there's also, like, I do want to say, it is, like, as far as a film from 1937 goes, this could have been way worse in terms of stereotypes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Several, I put in quotes, limitless amounts of animal endangerment. The answer to that's the entire film. She takes well-trained, highly trained, professional animals and makes them continually work for her for no compensation, by the way, in a home she does not own, meaning the homeowner could come at any time and murder them all.
I'm sorry, what kind of compensation do professional animals take?
I kept calling the villain in this movie the Wicked Witch of the West. She's not. She is not Maleficent either.
She's not. She's Grimhilda.
Right. And I kept confusing beats of this story with Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty.
And Sleeping Beauty. Oh my gosh.
Right.
Yes.
So I kept being like, okay, when's the prince going to fight the dragon? And like, when is... And then none of that happens. There is no exciting scene in this movie. There is no climax.
It is so weird.
All that happens is the dwarves chase an old lady up a hill. She gets struck by lightning and dies. And her scarecrow, or not scarecrows, vultures start circling down to eat her. Yeah.
Also, how come, like, why did they eat the witch when Snow White was obviously the first to die? Like,
I have no clue.
Maybe they couldn't get into the house.
I would assume that, but my even bigger problem comes after that. The animators just got tired because what we get is just a bunch of text being like, okay, here's how we get to the ending. And then the prince shows up and they say it's been an eternal vigil, but Snow White looks like she's been like 5 minutes. Like there's no change. It's the same season of the forest. Like it wasn't an eternal vigil. You guys were there for 2 weeks tops.
Well, that's the whole thing. She's so hot and they keep her in a glass coffin, which by the way, fucking weird. Like, can we talk about, I want to talk about the haunted forest because it has one of my favorite urban legends, which is that a couple of things. First of all, when this was released in the UK, you had to be accompanied by an adult if you were under the age of 16 because it was so terrifying. But secondly, and this is the urban legend part, apparently when it premiered at, I think Tower City Theater, I believe that's what it's called, but I'm going to have to double check that. Or maybe, Ben, you can just put in like a little thing underneath that corrects me. Just put it over my mouth like a little censor button. I don't know. Apparently, they had to replace all of the seats in this theater because so many children wet their pants when watching the haunted forest scene.
There's so many things I want to say that I can't say to that. That would be hilarious. So a few other things about this movie that like really stood out in terms of like why I think it is so appreciated and why it's been put on the AFI top 100 list. There's so many smaller details that just hint at people who are extraordinarily passionate about this project, in terms of just like the way a creature is moving around an item, like the snake going in and out of a skull at one point is like this immensely impactful image for this film. And I actually can believe a bunch of little kids were terrified by it because they've never been exposed to this kind of media. It would be terrifying.
Yeah.
When like they didn't have to do that. Like they didn't have to do these little touches that are consistently in shot after shot that add quite the heavy atmosphere. Like I didn't love this story. It's very just beat, 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 done. But for what this film is, you are feeling the world it created, like very effectively.
Yeah. I also think that they really demonstrated sort of the effect that color could have on the emotional weight of a movie. Because remember, there are very few color films released anywhere at this time. Wizard of Oz, which is like widely considered to be the first mass released color film, doesn't come out until a year after this. And so actually, speaking of the haunted forest scene, when she's like running through the forest and it's terrifying and all the like tree branches turn into limbs and they're like reaching for her and you see all these creepy eyes hidden in the shadow. That is like a terrifying scene that immediately turns happy and cheerful just by the addition of like lighting. She like ends up in this little like clearing in the forest and it's really dark and terrifying and there are all these eyes around her. And then as soon as it like lightens up and all the eyes come out and they're revealed to be like adorable little forest critters, it's immediately disarming. And then she starts having a sing along with them.
Yeah, and no one talks about that. And also, there's very clearly no carnivorous animals in her group, I don't think. Birds eat carnivorous animals, like animals eat only meat. And like there's no predators, I should say. And then they clearly have the predators more around the witch, because there's also like a continuation of this animal thing with the witch. She has rats around her and vultures and snakes, like I mentioned. And actually even continuing into the light thing you were talking about, we see that with like the huntsman coming at her. When he's about to kill her, it's like all shadowy and dark. And then once he changes his mind, it gets brighter. And so there's these continued themes of colors and even like creature design where like the animals around Snow White have these big cute eyes, or like of course the rats around the evil queen are all like beady and ugh.
I mean, also it's weird too because so this is like a German folktale from the early 1800s and possibly even earlier than that. It's just that the Grimm brothers, the brothers Grimm are the first people to sort of compile these into their collection of fairy tales. And so in another way, you have like another challenge for this film, which is how do we take something that's already at least 100 years old at this point and adapt it into a new medium and a new way of filming that medium in a way that's going to be appealing to mass audiences.
Yeah.
And actually, I would even like to extend that a little bit by saying, you know, I think Disney has a lot to do with the Grimm's fairy tales being sort of a part of our culture even today. You know, like
no question.
All of the things, you know, Sleeping Beauty, Little Mermaid, Princess Bride, those are all, or Princess Bride. Cinderella. Those are all movies that are based on German folklore from the Brothers Grimm, which you know, maybe was relevant in the early 1900s, but without having Disney retelling these as animated movies, like may not be as significant a part of our culture today.
And I would say that is like almost a low-hanging fruit point to make at this point, because Disney's become so synonymous with America's interpretation of these European tales and pushing them just further and further into almost like, it's funny, they really were just like folk tales around in Europe that no one took too seriously, but they're becoming almost like Greek myth-esque in at least how they are adapted again and again and again and presented again and again and again within our society today. Like it doesn't feel like just some story some person was telling. It's almost closer to a a Lord of the Rings type aesthetic around it rather than just like a popular book at the time.
Yeah.
And they've even done that with stuff beyond Brothers Grimm. Like if they adapt something in that era of Disney, it almost gets folded into that as well.
Yeah, definitely. What else? There's like a couple other things that I wanted to talk about.
Well, speaking of like how the animation is so effective in those ways, the dwarves themselves are remarkably distinct from each other.
Yeah.
And I don't know how anyone's favorite's not Bashful. He's adorable and I love him. But there's obviously some elements to this movie that have become controversial, especially as time's gone on. Most recently, and I'd say most significantly, I never thought about this until I read this, but Peter Dinklage came out and talked about how the representation of dwarves within this movie, he's like, I don't understand why, my people have to be presented as a different race than humankind in like stories like these. And I had never thought of it that way. And then I realized, like, I totally get how that might make you feel kind of shitty and not be a great thing.
Yeah,
wow,
no.
that's really a how do they not think of that?
No, they're totally treated as mythical kind of beings, like other, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole idea, is treating them as like an outgroup or as like an other. So yeah, that's a really great point. It just seems like such a given, I guess, with the movie. You don't even, it's one of those things that sometimes you need that glass shattering to even consider, because it's such a staple of, our movies, our film history.
Yeah.
That was something that Disney made a point of when they're animating the dwarves. This is, again, one of the first times that we're getting even like semi-realistic human interpretations and human movement. And so if you watch the scene where they're walking over, we meet them for the first time and they're walking back home across the log bridge, each of them they're also similar in shape, but each of them has a distinctive walk that mimics the personality that they have. So like Bashful will walk sort of like he's got his head in the clouds, and Dopey has this like, dragging sort of robe behind him, whatever, and Grumpy stomps along. And that's just, you can sort of identify them even without their faces, right? That's like that's a very cool thing that I thought they paid a lot of extra attention to that the average viewer might not notice.
It's one of those things where it's like you may not consciously notice, but some part of you does, and enhances like the movie-going experience as a whole.
Definitely.
But I think this brings us inevitably to our next question, Noah, which is, would you remake Snow White today? Would there be any benefit in that?
Probably.
How so? And who would you pick to do it then? You want it to be a Ghibli interpretation?
No, I just, I don't know. That is a tough question, because in some ways you want to see something done a little bit more tastefully, or like according to, with today's mindset, and in other ways, I think sometimes it is important to appreciate, like the original for what it is and for what it, set forth. And, maybe it wasn't the greatest in terms of social norms, but it definitely set the precedent for what we could, what we are able to do with animation.
Why is this the hardest one for you yet?
I don't know. Do you have an answer for it, Daniel? Like what's...
Oh yeah, easily no. This one,
No?
because what makes Snow White great is not its story. It's not super revolutionary or great beyond it just was an amazing technological achievement of a time that's been incredibly influential for decades, nearly a century since.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I would say it's, certainly one of the films that you must watch if you're going to be a film person. But in terms of like, should it be remade? I don't see any point to that, because like every time they try to be like, oh, now's the time to remake this thing that was so great because it was a technical marvel, we're about to have another technical leap forward. It does not work out. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think this question might be a moot point, because I don't know that we have any say in it, because isn't Disney kind of going through and doing live action remakes of all of their films? Like, I think we're probably going to get it in the near future, regardless of what you and I say.
Here goes like the Screen Rant style cut to the headline where it's like, and like that it's like coming out. Yeah.
Disney releases Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in live action.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, it's a hard no.
No, I mean, I guess maybe just to push back on you, I think it would be interesting to see it redone. I guess I'm just not opposed to seeing a modern version of it.
Okay. That's fair.
With maybe like a little bit more plot heavy, instead of just like singing every time we don't know what to do with the story.
And maybe make Prince Charming someone who actually has like a character rather than just man who breaks into wall. Well, Snow White for some reason is wearing like rags and then she just changes into a nice dress for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know where she got that. I don't know why she like. I don't know.
She's literally wearing like torn up rags like a peasant would wear, and then the next scene.
But she is a princess.
Yeah, that's why I'm confused. I'm like, why are you wearing that at all? That's a very strange choice.
I think the idea, like what we're supposed to take away from it is that the queen is so intimidated by Snow White's beauty that she doesn't want anyone to notice her beauty, and so she puts her to work as a scullery maid.
I get that.
Makes her wear all that stuff.
But then why does she have a super nice random dress on 5 minutes later?
Because she's not doing her scullery work anymore, Daniel.
Okay, that's, you know what? Fair enough. I'm wrong. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is a masterpiece. It's the greatest film ever made. 10 out of 10. Number 1 on my AFI list.
Moving it all the way up to 1. No, I think it's kind of in a perfect spot where it is.
Where is it?
At 30. It's at 34. I think it is impossible to, even though it's not the most complex story, I think it's impossible to take away just the sheer scope of influence that this film has on all movies going forward and sort of builds the foundation for what Disney, the company, is today. One of the largest, most profitable companies in the world.
Yeah. I mean, even just because we're moving on as like a cinematic culture, like we all get and understand the achievements that push Snow White to be so great for its time, but there have been more significant films since then. Like, I would actually put forth, I don't think Snow White was directed very interestingly. It's just flat shot. Like it's letting the animation do all the work.
Sure.
But now we have animated movies now that are directed and they plan out every shot like it's going to be a real live action movie and like all these layers. And then what computers have brought in for animation. And it's like, yes, Snow White's influence is tremendous, but in my mind, we are so far from it that it occupying one of the top 100 spots is no longer a necessary thing. Sure. That's just it's my takeaway. Crucify me, Snow White crowd. Crucify me. Any other final thoughts?
Yes. Last thought. Just tying on to what you were saying about like actually being able to direct animated movies. I watched the 7-minute animated short by Pixar this morning, Kit Bull, and it brought me to tears in 7 minutes because, let's be honest, that's kind of what Pixar is known for. But yeah, it's very clearly like you can tell that there is a storyboard for this movie. You can tell that sort of all the angles and all of the like how we want to move this story along in 7 minutes. I feel like that comes through really clearly. Especially with a film that's with something that is that short, you have to be able to get your story across really effectively, and part of that comes from how you want to shoot it.
Yeah. That's my opinion. I feel it's controversial. I feel like people are going to be mad, but good. Leave your hate. Feed me. And those are our final thoughts on Snow White, Disney's first ever movie and the AFI number 30. Like and subscribe if you have not already, and have a good one, y'all.